Interpreting ancient texts presents a structural challenge. Without a method to verify statements, any assertion remains unsubstantiated. This diagram maps the core of Nyaya epistemology, relying on pramana, or evidence. The system is governed by a strict Sanskrit axiom. Proof of an object is established only through its characteristics and empirical evidence, rather than by the strength of the assertion itself. Maharshi Dayanand applied this universal hermeneutic principle to Vedic texts. He enforced epistemological rigor, requiring every textual interpretation to be backed by observable proof. He utilized a cognitive sequence outlined by Vasyayana in the Nyaya Darshana. First, proof leads to certain knowledge. That knowledge then generates a desire to either acquire or discard the object. Finally, that internal desire dictates external action. True knowledge relies on a filtering system to separate reality from assertion. Without proof, textual interpretation remains a matter of personal opinion. This hierarchy tree illustrates the primary knowledge source, the Vedas. They are Svetah-Pramana, self-evident axioms. Below sit the Arya texts, from Brahma to Jaimini. These Pramana, dependent truths, require authors to be Apta, unbiased, benevolent, truthful, and active in truth. Any text falling outside this specific two-tier hierarchy lacks the status of primary evidence within this philosophical framework. Over centuries, the line between authentic ancient Arya scholarship and medieval on-Arya commentaries became blurred. This created a crisis where layered, often fraudulent interpretations obscured the original meaning of the manuscripts. To address this, Dayanand employed nirkshir vivek, the analytical capacity to separate truth from falsehood, modeled on the mythic swan's ability to extract milk from water. This timeline shows the specific medieval commentators Dayanand rejected: Sayana, Mahidara, Uvata, and Ravana. The rejection was based on three criteria: contradicting original root mantras, misunderstanding ancient contexts, and violating established pedagogical laws. Dayanand constrained his own commentary to align exclusively with foundational texts, like the Vedangas and Brahmanas, ensuring his work remained within the ancient lineage. False interpretations contaminate the philosophical baseline. Recovering the original logic requires discarding these medieval layers entirely and rebuilding from the foundational axioms. We can see the application of this system through the Sanskrit word asnaviram, which translates to without sinews or veins. Medieval commentators mapped this anatomical term to God, creating a logical conflict of physical bounds. Dayanand bridges this using wind. Just as formless wind moves through physical tubes without becoming them, God operates in the physical universe without anatomical limits, aligning physical terms with a non-physical entity. This method demonstrates how strict contextual mapping prevents logical contradictions when interpreting ancient metaphysical descriptions. To make this level of analysis accessible, a systematic tool was required, the Pramana-Suchi, or epistemological index. It allows scholars to cross-reference these interpretations across various texts. A secondary practical need is time. Modern scholars can rarely afford to reread entire libraries to locate specific evidentiary verses. There is also the historical loss of the oral tradition. This study environment illustrates the rigorous pedagogy once required to memorize texts, a skill that has largely vanished among modern readers. The research materials attribute this cognitive decline to major lifestyle shifts, including poor diet and the abandonment of disciplined practices like brahmacharya and pranayama. Citing Patanjali's Mahabhashya and the Vedas, the text argues that reading a verse without retaining its knowledge renders a scholar functionally blind and deaf to the actual meaning. Without a systematized index, the sheer volume of Vedic data becomes practically impossible for the modern human mind to navigate. There is a constant friction between the infinite scale of textual data and the limitations of a single human lifespan. This requires the scholar to act as a filter, extracting the essential axioms from a vast amount of information. The index provides a roadmap for this process, categorizing texts into authentic Arya and inauthentic on-Arya sources. This index functions as a structured sorting mechanism, preventing authentic Vedic data from being obscured by unverified assertions. A common error in scholarly debate is the decision to cite flawed Puranic anarya texts simply because they are familiar to an opponent. It is better to avoid mud entirely than let it touch you. As shown here, using a flawed source allows an opponent to turn it against you. Relying on unverified texts provides the ammunition to dismantle your premise using your own evidence. Compromising the epistemological hierarchy for a short-term rhetorical advantage causes a structural failure of the argument. Confusion often arises when ritual texts, like the Sanskarvadi used at the Havankund, appear to lack precise, verbatim citations from the Vedas. This is explained by the law of Uha, dynamically modifying the syntax, gender, or number of a mantra to fit a ritual context. Because of this, a working mantra may not match the original verbatim. Expecting an exact citation misunderstands how Vedic grammar is applied. The first comprehensive index for these proofs was published in 1974 by the Arya Sahitya Prachar Trust, compiled by Dharampalji Acharya. The final 1978 version moved sectarian or unverified claims into a separate index, ensuring they were available for review without being mistaken for primary evidence. The Pramana-Suchi provides a rigid reference framework, ensuring that Vedic interpretation stays anchored to its original axioms, even as human memory and traditions fade.